Peel, if you would please start recording the presentation. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I am Lorraine Hayes, and I facilitate the RFA process. This is the funding workshop for the non-operating and capital projects requests for applications, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with the Florida Governor DeSantis's Executive Order 20-69 due to the current state of emergency throughout the state of Florida, given the outbreak of the novel coronavirus COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus and to reduce the risk of COVID-19 illness, we have been advised and directed by the state to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's orders EO 20-69 and extended through EO 20-193 suspends the requirements of the Sunshine Law to have all meetings in a specific public place and to require quorum to be present in person. This order, posted on JWB's public notices website, allows public bodies to utilize communications media technology to conduct its business. For this meeting, JWB is convening via Zoom or telephone conference posted on our website, which clarifies how the public may join and participate if they wish. A public meeting notice was published in the Tampa Bay Times on September 20th, 2020, as required by Florida Statute 189-.015. Some attendees are participating by telephone conference. Participants are advised that people may be listening who do not provide comment, and those persons are not required to identify themselves. Accordingly, please be aware that others may see you. Laura Peel, JWB Director of Information Technology, will serve as the technology moderator of the remote participation by the JWB staff, presenters, and public. Okay. Please mute all your devices until you're called to speak on. We've already done our audio confirmation for those participating in this presentation. All of the materials for this meeting are posted on JWB's website with the agenda for the meeting, and we recommend that the attendee and the public follow the agenda as posted unless noted otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business. For public comment or questions, we will have public comment or questions at the end of this presentation. Please use the chat feature to ask questions. For follow-up on questions, those who are present in the Zoom webinar can use the raise hand feature in the Zoom webinar. For those attending using the telephone conference line, press *9 to recognize to speak. Ms. Caro or Laura Peel will call on each person by name or by 4-digit call-in number. Furthermore, for all participants, please remember to mute your phone or device when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly in a way that generates accurate minutes. I will be going over how to ask questions towards the end of the presentation in a little bit more detail for everyone. I am going to go ahead and turn to our agenda. Okay. I will be going over the objective of the RFA, the history, the RFA timeline, the scope and requirements of the RFA, the application format, evaluation criteria process. Then I'm going to hand it over to Laura Peel, who will be going over IT best practices. And then Diana Caro will be facilitating the questions. And the questions will be responded by Diana Caro, Laura Brock, or Laura Peel if it's IT related. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. The objective for the non-operating and capital projects request for applications is to make a one-time only investment in capacity building projects that increase the ability of 501c3 organizations that are currently receive program funding from JWB to operate effectively and efficiently over the long term. In fiscal year 20, there were $1.4 million in requests for 27 projects. JWB awarded $948,909 for 22 projects. The total budget for fiscal year 20 that could be awarded was $1 million. The percentage breakdown for the type of projects that were awarded back in fiscal year 20 were 45%, so the majority was facility at 45%. Second was tied between technology and transportation, both at 18%. Facility security, technology disaster, technology facility, and security were all at 4.5% of the total awards. I'm going to go over the timeline. The RFA was released on September 16th, 2020. You are currently on the optional funding workshop that is today, September 28th. The deadline for receipt for questions is noon on September 30th. So for those of you who have turned in questions already or will be asking questions today, you still have a little time to kind of let everything sink in and send in some additional questions. So you have until September 30th at noon. Any questions after that will not be answered, and you'll have to just do the best you can with the information that you have. October 5th is when written responses to the questions will be released. Those questions include all questions received prior to today, and up to September 30th at noon. Those questions and responses will be posted on our website, as well as sent out to everyone who had requested the RFA. October 26th is the optional technical assistance review by appointment. The technical assistance review is a review on your application, on the application that you have at that point, for critical elements to ensure that your application is complete for submission. October 30th is when the applications are due, and they're due by noon. We put this in red and bold, we underline it. It's very, very important that we receive your application by noon, because we know you work really hard on it, and there's nothing more disappointing to us or you for it to be submitted after that time, and then we cannot move it forward for review. So please, there's nothing wrong with turning in your application early. So please make sure you account for any time that you may have, because we also will not accept it based off of technical issues. Your computer doesn't work, anything else like that. So we really, really try to stress October 30th by noon, and please, please, please make sure that you plan accordingly. December 1st is our first evaluation committee meeting, followed by our second evaluation meeting, which is on December 2nd. Once the team has evaluated, it will move forward to presenting the recommendations to the JWB executive team, which will be held on December 7th. All three of those meetings are open public meetings, and the public is invited to be present during those meetings. For those of you who submit applications, it's a very good time for you to sit and listen to what the review team has to say about your application. It tells you, it'll give you some information in regards to the strengths and weaknesses of your application that you can use moving forward on any applications. December 17th is present recommendations to the JWB Finance Committee. on January 14th is the board action to award. As we know, both of those meetings are open to the public, and the public is invited to attend those meetings as well. January 18th, we'll announce the intent to award, and February 1st or prior, we'll be executing those agreements. And the majority of those agreements are going to be that contract amendment, since you are currently funded agencies. Okay, funding amounts. Only one application for up to 2 projects may be submitted by each agency. This is a bit, we have had some changes in this RFA versus the RFA from last fiscal year. One of those is this first bullet. You are allowed to request up to 2 different projects. The minimum project request amount is $10,000. Now that is for each individual project. So if you're submitting 2 projects, both projects have to have a minimum budget request from JWB of $10,000. A maximum total application amount of $125,000. So that's a combined total. So for example, if you have a project 1, that's $50,000, and a project 2, that's $75,000 requested by from JWB, that is allowable. And available funding this year is $1.25 million. Now you do see that there are some differences from last fiscal year. The 2 projects, due to our current environment, active hurricane season, COVID-19, agencies may have additional needs in their capital and non-operating, and JWB did identify this. Those capital projects could be, or non-operating projects could be planned or unplanned, but we did increase it to 2 projects, and also increased our total available funding of $1.25 million, and the total request of $125,000. So those are the changes that JWB has made to this RFA. So who's eligible? Most currently receiving, you must be currently receiving program funding from JWB. You also must be a 501c3 organization at the time of application. Another requirement is not currently on a JWB corrective action plan or a performance improvement plan at the time of submission. Okay, what is a project? An eligible capital project includes items that are purchased to acquire or improve a long-term asset, such as equipment or buildings, that are non-recurring and have a useful life of greater than 1 year. The capital projects must benefit a JWB funded program. Yes, please make sure that they are for a JWB funded program. This doesn't mean that if your request is agency-wide, that's fine too, but it does have to impact a JWB funded program. And please ensure that you're putting which program it is in your application. An example of a capital projects include, but are not limited to, technology asset replacement or enhancement, or a facility repair or enhancement. So an example would be like a computer lab with computers. Okay, what is not eligible? Expenses that are exclusively not for a JWB funded program. So if your request does not impact a JWB funded program, then it is not going to be considered for review from the evaluation committee. Expenses incurred as a result of carrying out an organization's core day-to-day activities, so operational expenses. Expenses for items that are unrelated to one another. So the part of a project is that they are related to one another. Examples would be An example of would be maybe like a playground equipment and computers. Those are two separate projects. But an example of ones that are different types of requests would be maybe like a computer lab, and you're asking for computers and you're asking for desks and chairs. Now that is related for a computer lab, so that would be considered one project. So just be thoughtful when you're setting up what expenses will be related to your project, because they will need to be related, and that information will be required in your application. In regards to staff development, office, classroom supplies, training, not associated with capital purchases, equipment, lease or rental, space rental, those are not eligible. However, just to put a little side point on there, training is allowable if it's for the capital project. So for an example, if you got a whole new system for your computer, training for that system would be allowable under this capital RFA. Also see JWB's board policy, which is listed in here for any additional ineligible expenses. Purchasing guidelines. In Form 4 vendor quote summary, and includes the quote amounts for all items requested from JWB. Only items with a total cost of $5,000 require a current, which is after 9/16 when the RFA released, written quotes or sole source justifications to be attached. Sole source may be used for purchases when there is only one practical and reasonable source with the ability to meet the requirements of the solicitation. Just be, there's a good definition of what a sole source is. This is what the vendor summary, quote summary sample looks like. We wanted to give you just a little sample. You're gonna have the agency name. You're also gonna have the project name because you have one for each project. But as you can see, we have 8 laptop computers. So if you see ABC company, DEF company, and GHI company responded to your request for quotes. Now this one, there's 8 laptops. Those laptops may be under $5,000 each, but the total cost is over $5,000. So this request would need to have quotes attached. And as you see in this slide, it says comments that the quotes are attached. Then you have the 8 HP Office Jet Pro color printers, JKL company, MNO company, and PDR company all responded to your request. Well, that is under $5,000 total. So we do not ask for your quotes to be attached. You still needed to get quotes, but we don't need proof of those quotes attached to your application. And then the third one, 8 licenses for Uniquely Ours software. Uniquely Ours, it's their software. They're the only ones that can get it. So they're a sole source, but you're going to have a sole source justification attached. And as you can see in the comments, it states that that's attached to your application. So please take a look at this for an example of what we're looking for when you're filling out this vendor quote summary form. We're going to move on to the application format. The following documents must be emailed to JWB as attachments with the naming and electronic file formats as shown below. There's also some requirements within the RFA on size and pages. But the first document, PDF document that you'll be submitting to us is the capital RFA-application, and then please put your agency's name in there. The format will be assigned addenda if issued. And what an addenda is a change to the RFA. So if we make any type of change for a requirement, we're going to go ahead and issue an addendum, and that would be emailed out to everybody that requested the RFA, as well as it will be posted on our website as well. Then it's going to be Form 1, which is the application signature form, which needs to be signed. There are directions within our RFA on who can sign your application. So please review that section to ensure that you're meeting those requirements for that application signature form. The other part of the application signature form is that you're going to be putting the JWB funded program in there on which, so please make sure that you fill that out when you're doing the application signature form. The second document that you're going to attach, or third document, is the project narrative for each project. So if you're going to have two projects, you are going to have two separate narratives. Both narratives must not exceed 5 pages, but that doesn't include the attachments. So attachments such as photos, drawings, maps that support the project, lease versus buy, documentation, that does not get included in that 5-page maximum. So, and remember the 5 pages is for each project. So you could have up to 2 Form 2s included in your application. Then you're going to attach Form 4, which is the vendor quote summary for each project. You could have 2 of these documents. But also remember to attach those written quotes and or sole source justifications if they're applicable. Form 5 will be your contract amendment terms and conditions compliance checklist. There are a couple of conditions within the RFA that you will review, and if you will comply or not comply. Some may not be applicable based on the type of request that you have. So all of that was one PDF file that will be sent to me. The other file that you're going to be sending is an Excel format, and that's going to be your capital RFA Form 3, which is the non-operating and capital RFA budget. That needs to be sent in an Excel file. Now remember, with our RFA and any of our documents, that we have a 10 megabyte maximum for each of your emails. Now that includes anything that you have in your email message. So it's the entire file. So if your file is only 9, but it's not going through, it could be because of, you know, an attached link in your signature. It could be, hi Laura, here's the RFA. Any of those could add to the size of your email. So please be, please keep that in mind when you're sending out the email, because sometimes it doesn't bounce back as quickly as you would like, mostly with our noon deadline. So please try to do that earlier. Now you can send the application in several emails. So you can cut it up however you want to get it under that 10, because when it comes back to me, I'm going to put it in the right place. And I'm going to put it all together, and it's going to look exactly like it did before you had to cut it up. So don't worry about sending me multiple emails, but please make sure that you say email, 1 out of 5 or 2, 3, because then I can make sure that I have all of the documents, and I can give you a call. If I get 3 out of 5 and 5 out of 5, I can give you a call and let you know I didn't see 4 out of 5. So, and please feel comfortable to give me a call. Make sure that I received all of your documents. But I just wanted to make sure you understood that there is a 10 megabyte maximum, and that there is no penalty for sending it in many different pieces. Okay, we're going to go on to the evaluation process. So round 1 is the minimum criteria. This is the criteria that you have to pass to even have your application reviewed by our evaluation committee. The application must be received by the due date and time by noon on October 30th, 2020. You'll see this a couple of times. Like I said, we really want to stress this due date because it does not get extended for any purpose. So we really want to make sure you understand when this deadline is and make sure you plan accordingly. Applicant currently receives program funding from JWB, and the application is for the benefit of a JWB program. So both of these pieces are very important. If you submit anything that's not for a JWB funded program that doesn't impact it in some way, it won't be even considered to move forward. And again, please make sure it's very clear in your application which JWB funded program that your project is going to impact. and make it clear on how it will be impacted. Applicant is not currently on a JWB corrective action plan or performance improvement plan. This is at the time of submission. Applicant only submits one application for up to 2 capital projects per agency. We will not consider more than 2 projects. So please do not respond with more than 2 projects. Agency is a 501c3 at the time of submission. So for anyone who is government, they're not eligible for this RFA. Only a 501c3 is eligible for this RFA. Application signature form is signed by an authorized company officer. Again, we do highlight who can sign for your agency. So please review that in the RFA document. Application request is a minimum of $10,000 for each project and does not exceed $125,000 total. Again, if you ask for a project that's $5,000, that project is not going to be considered. So please make sure that the amount requested from JWB is going to be $10,000 at least as a minimum for each of your projects. And please make sure that the total between your 2 projects, if you have 2, does not exceed $125,000. Now, of course, you could have one project that's $125,000 as well. That's the maximum total request. Round 2. So this is for applicants whose applications pass that minimum criteria. Then the following criteria is going to be used for the evaluation committee to evaluate your application. With the points shown will be used to further evaluate and score the applications. Now this round 2 will be used for each of your projects. So if you submit 2 projects, both projects are going to be evaluated separately, which means also one could be awarded and one could not, or both could or could not. So just to be clear, there's going to be an evaluation for each of your projects. The evaluation criterion points are as follows. The highest weighted is that statement of need, which is 30%. The project description and return on investment are both at 25%, and cost effectiveness is at 20. So the total points available are 100. Now, if you look at your narrative, which is Form 2, you will also see that there are questions, and the questions actually correspond with each of the evaluation criteria. So you can see what questions are weighted in the heavier criteria. So that's round 2. So the application, some other information in regards to this round 2 evaluation is the applications must have an average score of 65 or above to be considered for further evaluation. So if at the end of the round 2, your project scores under a 65%, that project will not be considered for funding. A high evaluation score does not guarantee that an application will be funded. The geographic distribution of the funding across North, Mid, and South County will be considered during the ranking. Applications must identify which programs their projects benefit and self-identify whether their programs serve North, Mid, South, or is county-wide. Now, we have been lucky. We have not had to make any changes based off of this second bullet point in regards to geographic distribution. Based off of the requests, it's been equitable. However, we do look at this every single year, so that is always considered when we're reviewing our round 2 high scores. Okay, round 3. This is when the evaluation committee presents the scores for each of the projects for each application and the committee's funding recommendations to the JWB executive team for consideration in developing the final funding recommendation to be presented to the board for approval and award. And then just again to go over round 2 and round 3, those meetings are public and they are useful for our applicants to be present for. One, because you get to hear the strengths and the weaknesses. We've been lucky enough to have this RFA each year for the last several years. So any feedback would be useful. If the RFA goes out next year, then you can get the feedback on what your strengths and your weaknesses were. As well as sometimes there is clarification for public comment, so it is helpful to be present. So just a side note in regards to being invited to be present during those meetings. Some important points I want to go over. All communication must go through myself, Lorraine Hayes, which all my information is in your RFA document. It's also in this PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is available on our website along with the agenda. But please make sure all your communication comes through me. Ensure that you read and respond to all the questions and requirements of the RFA. Some of our narrative questions, they have more than one question within the question, so make sure you fully read the question and you fully answer them. Attachment 3 is the application checklist provided in the RFA to assist applicants, so that you do not fill out and send with your application. This is just something helpful for you to make sure that your application is complete. Be thorough and make sure that all items are accounted for in your project budget. For example, include warranties, keyboards, wires, even if it's not to be paid by JWB, but to be paid for by another funding source. So for example, if you're asking for computers, make sure that those wires and those keyboards are included so that you don't get the computers and then have to find out, where you're going to pay for those, the wires or the warranties. Another example would be some are operating costs that you cannot request within this capital RFA, but they will impact your budget. So we want to make sure that those are included in your budget. An example of that would be if you're asking for a van. It's a new van. There are going to be costs associated with that van. For example, insurance, maybe the cost of the driver for the van. Those are two things that are operating costs that you cannot request through the capital RFA, but they are costs that are going to be associated with your project. And we do want to see that you have accounted for them and how that those costs will be supported through funding. So just want to make sure that you include all of those pieces. Don't forget to consider implementation costs for projects when developing your budget. Some other important points. Attachments such as photos, drawings, and maps are encouraged. So if you're trying to replace a flooring and it's really bad and you want to show them, how bad it is, it does help our team see, what's going on. Also, if you're, it's always helpful to get an idea, a clear picture of what you're requesting. Maybe you're asking for something that's not intuitive or people normally see, so you want to give an idea what that looks like. Those are just some examples, but photos and drawings and maps, a lot of times those are helpful to help paint a picture of what you are requesting or what you're trying to replace. Funding will not be considered for more than 2 projects per agency. So again, please make sure you don't ask for more than 2 projects. That includes a narrative, but it also includes when you're asking for something, really make sure that what you're requesting within a project is 1 project and not 2 projects that kind of been put into one. So if you ask for, if you're asking for, playground equipment and then off topic for a computer, that is not going to be considered 1 project. So just please make sure that what you're asking for is related within a project. Do not exceed the 5-page limit for the project narrative. This is a reimbursement, cost reimbursement. So make sure you're aware of that. JWB will not advance funds for these projects. So each of the items must be purchased first and then reimbursed. All purchases must be made and received by September 30th, 2021. So keep that in mind because they will all have to be purchased and received by that time or they're not eligible for reimbursement. Here's some of my information, but information can be found on our website. Any changes in meeting date and time and written responses to the questions will be posted on our website. Again, please direct all communication concerning the solicitation to myself, Lorraine Hayes. There's my email, my phone number. I'm always happy to help. And then we're going to move it over to Laura Peel for IT best practices. When she completes her presentation for best practices, I'm going to go over what you are going to be the process for asking questions. And Laura, take it away.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Laura Peel, Director of IT at JWB, and I am not on the team this year, but I've been invited back to go over just some general guidelines that we give because technology requests are always big with this. So some of these are just kind of what we follow, but we thought we'd go over that. So when we're talking about replacement of hardware, generally these are guidelines that we go through, and if you are replacing hardware, you want to make sure your statement of need includes the age of the hardware that you're replacing. We recommend replacement of computers or laptops 3 to 5 years. Printers probably about 8 years, along with copiers. And with copiers, just want to say we do not cover leases. So this would be a purchase. Scanners, 8 years. Wi-Fi devices or phones typically get replaced within 2 years. However, most of the time you can get those items free through your carrier if you negotiate with them. But and I do want to say any of the ongoing telecommunication services with those would not be included because they are operational expenses. Servers, typically 5 years. iPads, tablets, 3 to 5 years. By the way, protective covers for those, or even your laptops, are certainly encouraged and should probably be part of your project, in particular if they're mobile devices. Film equipment and AV equipment is typically 5. TVs and projectors, typically 8. And monitors, they're not very expensive these days, so we use them until they die, or the size is no longer appropriate. Some other considerations, and definitely things you'll want to put in your statement of need when you're writing your responses. Does the equipment work? Is it compatible with updated or current technology? Does it meet the need of the program or the agency? Security risks, because a lot of old equipment or old software will have security risks. For instance, you'll also want to look at is the equipment or software still supported? For instance, the operating system for Windows Server 2008 is no longer supported, so that would be a reason why you would want an upgrade. Is there a warranty, or has the equipment come to end of life? Those are other reasons that you want to put in your statement of need. As far as Windows desktop, we suggest Windows 10 or higher. Definitely XP or Vista are definitely not good. Let's see, when you're purchasing hardware and software, and I think Laura mentioned this, we want you to include warranties. We suggest 3 years. That's typically what we get on our equipment, although if the life expectancy is longer, you may want to consider longer. And then I believe Laura mentioned this as well. Make sure you have a plan for implementation, installation, configuration, support, and you'll want to put all of that in your document. There's a couple of different ways with software that it's housed these days. The old school way is on-prem, which is on-premise, typically requires servers and support in-house. As you know, a lot of people are moving to cloud computing or software as a service, and all of this could be included in your proposal. Cloud computing is the practice of using a network or remote servers hosted in the internet to store and manage and process your data. versus the on-premise. And then software as a service is a software licensing and delivery model, which is typically licensed on the based on a user. It's centrally hosted. It's referred to as on-demand software and accessed typically through a thin client or a web browser. And licensing for that, as I said, is typically per user, but I did see recently where they had it per site. So just consider all that. And then the two licensing models that we see is pay-as-you-go or provisioning. So take all that into consideration. As you know, Microsoft Office 365 has become pretty big, and subscriptions for the services include Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Teams. Just want to throw out there that TechSoup offers not-for-profits agencies and cheap alternatives for these subscriptions. And these are pretty easily installed. You don't need servers on site. So just kind of wanted to talk about that for a minute. We do suggest that you do implement a company-wide email if you don't have it. We suggest personal email should never be used. So that would be another reason for Office 365. I want to talk about databases for a second. Access to databases is a good solution for enterprise, organizations such as yourself. We suggest this not only for all your operating things, your accounting and all that, but we encourage you to get your own database for participants. Now, of course, we have GEMS and we are looking at replacing it, and that's not going away. But if you can avoid doing dual data entry, entering into multiple systems, we suggest that you look into that. It would allow you to do your own reporting, avoid duplicate data entry, and we have a way that you can upload to us. You can upload participant data, however, you cannot upload financial data if that is of interest to you. So we encourage everybody to look into that. We have a format that is pretty basic that can be used. It collects, the uploads collect the same fields and so forth. Just a note on consultants, wanted to give kind of general rates for the Tampa Bay area. If you're looking for consultants to help with your implementation of your project. Help desk with set up computers and troubleshoot, typically $50 to $125 an hour. General network configuration, including your operating and system configuration, firewall configuration, storage, etc. About $150 to $200 an hour. Advanced network configuration, which would be more like virtual machine support, SharePoint, advanced routing and infrastructure, disaster recovery. Those tend to be a little more expensive, $175 to $250 an hour. And then there's always web page design, service maintenance, that's a little cheaper, $75 to $150 an hour. And database design, maintenance and programming, $150 to about $250 an hour. Of course, depending on the experience or the knowledge, that could vary a little bit. And then just one last comment that Laura did mention, we will pay for training for any of the technology awards, if it's included in your project for a technology award, we'll pay for the training for that system, but not for just other systems that are not part of that project. So I think that's it, but I will look for questions when we get to that section. So thank you very much.
Hi everybody, I'm back. We're going to start the questions portion. So I'm going to go over some information on how we're going to do this since we are doing it virtually, which is different. Just to give you, we're going to give you 5 minutes for you to write down all your questions. What we want you to do is ask questions in the chat box. So please put in all the questions that you have in that chat box. And then Diana Caro is going to be responding to the questions. So what she's going to do is read the questions on the chat. She's going to state your name. She's going to state the question. And then if she has any questions regarding the question originally, she's going to ask you to clarify. When she asks you to clarify, if you can do the raise your hand on the Zoom webinar, Laura Peel is going to unmute you so that you can clarify the question for Diana. Then please go ahead and mute it again, and she's going to respond to your question. After she responds, she's also going to ask if that answered your question fully. So if it does not, go ahead and raise your hand again. Laura Peel will unmute you, and then you're going to clarify what you're looking for from her. If you have additional questions that are unrelated, please make sure you go ahead and type those back into the chat box, and Diana will get to them once she's gone through the questions that precede that one. Let's see. For anybody who is dialing in, you're going to go ahead and press 9 after Diana has reviewed all the questions and answers for everything that's in the chat box. You're going to hit 9. Laura Peel will call you by the last digits of your name. Of course, you don't have to state your name if you don't want to, but then you're going to go ahead and state your question to Diana. Then she is going to answer your question. Again, she will give a pause if she did not fully answer your question or you need to clarify, then go ahead and do that. But please don't speak over Diana while she's responding. Diana may defer to Laura Kruger-Brock, who's also on our presentation, or Laura Peel. So she may be deferring the questions that fall under them, and they may be answering it. They too will give you a chance if they have to clarify the question. Again, you need to raise your hand, and they too will give you some time after they answer the question to make sure that they fully answered your question. So that's the process that we're going to follow for these questions. Also, again, you have till September 30th at noon. If you don't want to ask a question today and want to instead send it to me via email, that's fine. If you think of something tonight that you forgot to ask, don't worry, you have till September 30th at noon. So those will be included with the questions and responses. The final thing, and then I wanted to make sure I state, is that these are not official responses. Your official responses to the questions will be in that questions and responses document that will be emailed out and posted on our website. So, and any material changes that come from any of the questions here will be coming out as an addendum. Again, that one will be emailed out to anybody who's requested the RFA and will be posted on our website. So it is 3:47. I'm going to give you till 4:42 to post those questions in the chat box. And once 5 minutes is up, I will let you guys know, and then Diana will take it from there. So, okay, go ahead. And I apologize. I want to clarify. There is a question and answer section on here where there are a couple of questions that have been put in the question and answer post. Please move those over into the chat box so that those are answered by Diana. So anybody who posted any questions in that question and answer area, please make sure that you go ahead and copy and paste those into that chat box. Thank you. Okay, it is 3:52. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Diana. She is going to read off the questions and the names. And again, to follow that process, if you have any questions, of course, raise your hand and we'll help you out. Okay, it's going to move it over to Diana. Thank you, Diana.
Okay, hello, I'm Diana Caro, the Budget and Business Services Manager here at JWB. I have one question I'm going to start with that was received prior to today's workshop, so I'll start there. And the question was that if an individual site is currently on a corrective action plan, is the organization going to be prohibited from applying for this grant for other sites or programs that are currently funded by JWB? And the answer is yes. The minimum criteria that's included in the RFA states that the applicant that is on a JWB corrective action plan or performance improvement plan is ineligible. So yes, that would apply to all programs for that particular applicant. I will just remind you too, that's at the time of submission. So if you're on a corrective action plan today, but you get off of it tomorrow, then that would be fine as long as you're not on a corrective action plan at the time that you're submitting your application. So next, I'm going to start going through the questions. And the first one I have is, if we are requesting SaaS licensing that is per user per month, are we able to include the total cost of the user for 12 months in the grant budget? And I would say yes. For software licensing, the initial year will be eligible. So typically for your software licensing, they're going to bill you for year one at the beginning of your license. And so that year one would be eligible. However, make sure in your application that you address, and there is a question for this, how you're going to pay it in the subsequent years. And that question was from 211. Can you let me know, did that answer the question for you?
That came from Mickey Thompson. Mickey, if it didn't, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. Yeah, and we have a question, so I'm going to allow her to speak. Go ahead, Mickey.
Hi.
You should be able to unmute.
Hey, I just want to, because I don't know all the rules of the game on the first one here, I just want to say thank you. That does answer my question, but I didn't know how to answer you in chat or.
Oh, yes.
So I'm just saying it. Thank you. That's great. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So yes, even though the grant period ends 9/30 and your contract will start February 1, that whole full year that you'll be billed at the beginning, that would be eligible. Now, I guess I would caveat that if you were paying it monthly, then you might run into a problem on 9/30 when your grant ends, because this is cost reimbursement. But typically, I would expect that you're going to see that your year one of your SaaS license is going to be an annual payment, which would then be fine. So the second question is from Janet Hooper, and it says, can you use this funding to purchase land or build a new building? And the answer to that is no. There was a section of Lorraine's PowerPoint presentation that listed the ineligible expenses, and the last bullet has a link to JDB's board policy that gives ineligible expenses. And one of the things in that board policy is that JDB funding cannot be used for the acquisition of real property. So the answer to that is no. And Laura, if you can, or Janet, if you can, if that doesn't answer your question, raise your hand and Laura will unmute you.
She does have her hand up. So Janet, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Yeah, no, that answers my question. I just didn't I didn't know I was supposed to do chat or what we're supposed to do to tell you that it answered my question. That's good.
Yeah, I'm sorry this is so
Yeah, no,
tricky,
it's
but-
okay. That's
Oh,
probably
thanks.
a good way to do it. So yes, you answered my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I will go to the next one, which is electronic signature. Is that allowed on Form 1? And the answer to that is yes. And I'll just add also that JDB really recently just purchased DocuSign. So some of you guys might have gotten your contracts for FY21 and been able to sign off on those using DocuSign. So it's something that we've just recently implemented here, but yes, absolutely, we're okay with electronic signature on Form 1. The next question is, sometimes during this pandemic, it is difficult to get 3 vendors to come do estimates on your property. We can ask, but cannot guarantee that they will come or give quotes on a timely basis. How should this be dealt with? I'm going to pull up the RFA for my own reference, just so I give you the right form number. But in Form 4 is the vendor quote summary. And it says if there's only one source for the requested item or service, a written justification must be attached to Form 4, explaining the reason it is a sole source. I would just expand on that to say, if you reach out to the 3 vendors and 2 get back to you and they schedule a time to come out and the other one you don't hear from, or you can't get them in time, just apply that information, just kind of write up a written justification, attach it to Form 4, just listing the 3 vendors that you reached out to and what happened, and why you were only able to get the 1 or the 2, and if you guys applied a reasonable effort and that's all that could come through, then that'd be fine. Does that answer your question? That was from Jeff Oppenheim.
And I'm waiting to see if it's done. Yep. Go ahead, Jeff. Jeff, you can unmute and speak.
Yes, that does answer my question. Thank you very much.
Great.
And I also had one about subscription services, but you've already answered that as well.
Oh, okay. So I won't call on. I'll read it again, but I won't call on you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So the next one is, would repairing leaks in a building and then replacing floors damaged by the leaks fall under one project? And I'm going to give my answer, but I might also call on Laura Brock to see if she has anything to add. And I will say, I know that Lorraine mentioned earlier in the presentation that we're going to answer questions today that come up, but the official response is what we're going to put out in writing. So make sure you guys always check those, because if there's some change or further explanation between now and the written response, it's the written response that that you would need to follow. So the reason I give that caveat is because typical repairs and maintenance that are considered operating expenses, and so those would not be eligible. So if the leak was part of a repair or maintenance, it wouldn't be eligible because it would be an operating expense. Replacing the floors would be an eligible capital expense. Laura, Brock, do you have any other thoughts on that, the repair part?
Yeah, that kind of falls in between two items. I think if it is related, if the leaks is what caused the floor damage, I could see that you could perhaps bundle that as a project. But again, we may need to look a little bit more into that. But my thought process was if they were related, as opposed to just you were doing a repair and maintenance and then you stumbled across the floor situation. But that would be my response.
So, Andy, I'm guessing that probably didn't perfectly answer your question. And if you want to add anything to it, let us know. But, definitely look for our official response in writing. And Laura, if you want to unmute him in case he's got
He does not have his hand up. If you'd like to add something, please raise your hand and I can unmute you. So I'm assuming no comment.
Okay. All right. We'll just look for the written response to that for the official response. Yeah, so I will read the next question, which Jeff Oppenheim had asked, and he'd said we'd answered it earlier, but I'll read it anyhow, that subscription services are usually monthly or annually. Does that mean the JV will only fund 1 year's worth of subscriptions, for example, Office 365 or DocuSign, etc.? Yes, we will just fund the first year, and as I answered to the other question, just make sure you address in the application your funding source for the future years. That's all the questions I see in here right now. Do we have any others?
There were some questions in the questions and answer area that did not move over, but it looks like those questions were
Yeah, I believe
answered.
it's over, Lorraine.
Yeah,
Did
they're
they?
in there.
Yep. And she's answered them.
And did we have anyone, Laura Peel, join by phone?
No, we did not. Everybody was on the call, and I guess I'll say I don't see any hands up, so I'm assuming, or any other questions. Oh, wait, here, one just came in.
Sorry, my phone was ringing, so I muted it there for a
Diana,
second.
there's one question that came in.
Yep. Okay, so this one is, if 2 projects are submitted, will they be evaluated separately so you might get one and not the other? The answer to that is yes. Each project will receive its own score. So yes, it is possible that you could be funded for one and not the other.
I'm giving it another minute. I don't see any hands up or questions coming in.
Well, and while we're giving it a minute, I'll just remind again that there's still time that, if you think of a question after this, you can go ahead and email that to Lorraine Hayes and we'll add it to our responses that we're sending out. What date is that going out again, Lorraine? October
5th is when the questions and responses are going to be posted, and the questions from our potential applicants are due by September 30th by noon. So please make sure that if you have any additional questions, that you do send those to me prior to noon on September 30th.
So you have a couple more days, but do you have anything else that you can think of right now that we can answer for you? Either put it in the chat, or if you need a minute to write it out, raise your hand and just let us know, and we can give you that time. No need to rush.
Diane, I do not see any hands up.
All right, well, I'm going to assume we answered all your questions and just thank you for attending, and we're looking forward to receiving your applications.
And I'm happy to see so many people on the call today. I really appreciate that. You finding out more information in advance. That's great.
Thank you, everybody. That will conclude our meeting today. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you. Bye.